Greetings, everyone. We're back again on the 5th of August, 2023 for the second session of our Sabbath, Michael and I. And we're back to the death of Bruce Lee. And this is a intense study that leads to a much bigger picture, Michael, doesn't it?
We hope so, yes. At least we hope. The only thing as Christians we do have is hope, and I hope that we will be supported by Almighty Spirit, that He can really lead us into all truth, because we all seeing actors here, we all seeing liars, liars, liars. Everywhere. Everywhere. You can't trust anyone. No one. So we have to make our own picture. Without any further ado, from a video I found, radio interview in 1973 of his wife or widow. In the Bruce Lee, the last interview, Linda's request to the people of Hong Kong to stop speculating on her husband's death. But what else to say? Coming to Betty Ting Pei, born in Beijing, China. I'm a little bit surprised because I have learned that she is coming from Taiwan. She joined the Shaw Brothers in Hong Kong, and she was a starlet when she met in 1971 superstar Bruce Lee. And I may add that she was introduced by none other than Raymond Shaw. What a coincidence. Although insisting for years that she and Lee were just friends, she admitted in 2006 radio interview that they had been lovers for more than a year at the time of his death. So you can't believe anybody. No, don't do that. Don't do it. Videos say that she was labeled with coquette, bad woman and carnal porn star by the media. Only few people know that this wild girl's uncle is Chan Xiu Liang. Let me tell you that she has a background of people together with triads, of course. Would she be a starlet otherwise? Would she be in the movie business otherwise? Interviewed with the rumored secret girlfriend of Bruce Lee, Betty Ting Pei, that drive the nations into shock. Talking about fate, you can't escape my question about Bruce Lee. He died in Betty Ting Pei's apartment. Did Bruce Lee die because of his strenuous sexual activities on the bed with you? What a question, huh? It reminds me of Stoner or the Shrine of Ultimate Bliss with the aphrodisiac. She says, if I had made love to Bruce and he died because of it, I would admit it. Yeah, and she admitted then in 2006 that she had an affair with him. Yeah, you can't, it's just a waste of time to believe anybody. Yeah, don't believe her. She's just a starlet. She does everything for fame, it seems. But there is a deeper version of that too. So these are actors. They are able to lie in front of millions of people. And we do not know also if that translation is correct and what court they were referring to. At least in my research, I found Betty Ting Pei the equivalent to Lee Harvey Oswald. Everybody blames the death of Bruce Lee to Betty Ting Pei. She did not react in time. She played everything down. Yeah, for me, she is Lee Harvey Oswald.
A patsy.
A patsy.
Yeah.
Because for one reason, which to me was very obvious afterwards, the question is, who killed Bruce Lee? Would the Chinese community, if it were some high-ranking criminals, would they refer to a starlet, a girl, a young girl, killing their golden goose or killing their idol, killing this superstar Bruce Lee? Really? Do you really think that they would then rely on a so-called starlet in a community where women are being seen as inferior? Would they do that? Would it be the same thing around with Jackie Kennedy? Then we are speaking about the West, but now we're speaking about the East. Would they really rely on a bet-eating pay to get rid of Bruce Lee? Remember, the official story is that she was not alone in that apartment. Raymond Chow was accompanying her until 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6:30, different versions. And there's more to it. Because nobody dies from an equagesic pill. Except Bruce Lee. Yeah? Bruce's own personal physician, Mr. Donald Langford, says no painkiller killed Bruce. It's interesting. And he said, no one has ever tried to interview me and talk about Bruce or his death, said Miss Dr. Langford. The interrogation was like a cover-up of the truth, reports Okana, who is an author who researched deeply into the rise and fall of Bruce Lee. See, this is an edition of videos I saw. He explains, I don't think the medicine was the reason for death. I think it has more to do with cannabis. There you go with Bay Logan's thought or theory about the tainted cannabis. With the analysis, the cause points to the direction of cannabis, at least more than in the direction of an equagesic pill. Because the first attack he had in May was for cannabis, but there they did catch him on time and rushed him to the hospital. Dr. Don Langford reminds us of the further reason for the verdict that was eventually reached by the inquest. There was a great deal of concern because of Bruce's life insurance policy. For a long time I believed that if I said anything the case might be reopened. I even took Bruce's notes out of the file of the Baptist hospital in case someone might attempt to get to them. Cannabis has known chemical alkaloid that can produce seizures. It can be extracted and administered to produce that effect. Equagesic was not at all involved in Bruce's first collapse. Thousands of people take equagesic with no adverse effects, whereas people can be adversely affected by cannabis. It doesn't even need a hypersensitivity to it, simply exposure, and it's impossible to determine the dosage. There's not a question in my mind that cannabis should have been named as the presumptive cause of death. I would like to have seen a truer verdict rendered, but the whole world was watching this inquest to see if a precedent would be set. If cannabis had been ruled as the case of death, it would have opened up a real can of worms, because no one had ever before said it had that potential. Hong Kong didn't want to set that precedent, particularly in view of the fact that the coroner was a layman. Dr. Langford states plainly, he was the fittest man I've ever seen. A headache tablet didn't kill Bruce Lee, but he didn't think that there was anyone who knew what was best for him except himself. The factors that caused his collapse in May are the same as those that caused his death in July. Bruce was affected by one or more of the alkaloids in cannabis. The official verdict wasn't so much a cover-up as an attempt to produce a verdict that was more socially acceptable. This is coming from the book The Fighting Spirit, of the testimony of Dr. Langford, of Bruce's own physician.
Wow.
So first of all, we have a testimony of somebody, at least, who is at least officially not an actor. Dr. Wu echoes this and says, we gave him a good talking on before we discharged him from the hospital in May and told him not to eat the stuff again. Since he'd had such a bad reaction to it, we told him that if there was a next time, the consequences might be even more severe, but I knew he wasn't listening. He was convinced that he was invincible, immortal. After being introduced by cannabis by Steve McQueen, Bruce Lee was starting using it while he was in Los Angeles, and both Joe Louis and James Coburn witnessed it. Bob Ball says that Bruce was using it while filming Enter the Dragon and kept a jar of hash brownies on the desk to nibble between takes. Between 71 and 73, Bruce's weight has dropped from 145 to 122 pounds due to a punishing exercise regime and workload that resulted in his body fat content falling to the seemingly impossible figure of less than 1%, if that is correct. On production stills taken on the set of Enter the Dragon, it is even possible to see the individual clusters of muscle fiber, particularly on his shoulders, arms, and chest. So that is the contradiction. When we have a testimony of Dr. Daniel Langford, and now in contradiction here, the testimony, so to speak, of Betty Tingpei. He says, of course, it naturally happened. It can't be other reasons, can it? About the death of Bruce Lee, naturally happened. He just never woke up. Natural happened. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, so you see that it makes no sense to listen to anybody on of this actress guild, actors. Yeah, and she said that Bruce trained his body in an extreme way, pushing his body to a very limit each.
Each time, yeah.
Each time, yeah. Others pointed to the trial, the Chinese mafia organization, as the real culprits, claiming that Lee has refused to pay them money in exchange for protection, as was customary among those movies, actors, etc. According to his wife, Linda Lee, Bruce used to confess to her premonition that he was tormented and that he was not going to live even half the years that his father, who died. And now I remember you that Linda Lee said, don't speculate any further of the death. It just happened. That's it. If I agree to it, or if I'm fine with it, you should be too, or something like this. Question. If Linda Lee has access to the food of Bruce Lee, you have to rule her as a possible suspect. I'm not joking. I'm absolutely not joking. So everything that she's telling us, she's not an actress, but maybe she has to act because she's under pressure or something. So she's at least a suspect because she's now ruling the Bruce Lee estate, for example. So she is at least a suspect. So everything that she's putting out or telling, yeah, must be questioned. So everything that she says, I have to doubt.
Yeah, well, let's put into the equation that she put that insurance policy on Bruce just like at the same time he was poisoned in May, right?
Most probably, yes. We weren't there.
And it went into effect. No, but the policy went into effect, what was it? On the day or the same
5
time
days
period?
later, 5th May to 10th May, yeah.
Right.
So it is easy to say that afterwards, yeah. So like in the astrologer's case, yeah, she was totally right, yeah. You can claim anything, yeah. Also that Bruce Lee died at the age of 32 and his father died at the age of 64. But you see that you can make everything up afterwards and you say that, see, that's true. He was under a bad omen because he was giving a female name. Yeah, and on his birth, because his mother has lost a child before, and all this stuff. Yeah, you can go into every curse and every nitty gritty, and you can prove it right. And maybe some superstitious people say, okay, that was the crashing of the mirror on the roof of Bruce Lee's house 2 days before he was dead. Yeah, sorry, guys, you can make up anything, but we have to come to a common sense thing. And if Dr. Langford is thinking about poison cannabis, and Bay Logan also thinks that is a poisoned cannabis maybe, and I know that there is some other people who is writing a prolific book about the death of Bruce Lee, he says could also be cocaine. But of course, they try to put it off as an accidental happens, and and also in the case of the death of his son Brandon Lee, who had been accidentally shot on the movie set. So his son also was an actor, which I think is an extremely bad choice. Yeah, but what do you do with this name? If your name is Brandon Bruce Lee, yeah, he was 28 when he was accidentally shot on the set. by Michael Massey, MM33, on the set. Yeah, so he was accidentally, so everything was an accident. Yeah, so if you really believed in an accident by Bruce Lee, yeah, you have to believe also in an accident by Brandon Bruce Lee, and there are not so many people being shot on the set. I remember 3 out of memory on the set where thousands of bullets are being fired every day on movie sets. Yeah, but you have to believe, really to believe in coincidences here, and not in the connections. Yeah, and I more believe into connections. I do not believe in coincidences. The doctor who signed the autopsy, that's another subject, acknowledged years later that he endorsed the report without making an autopsy, and the investigation concluded that to save time. It's great, no? Isn't that great? Everybody tells you another story. Yeah, everybody tells you. I got also very outlandish story here from the mystery of Bruce's death revealed. It is a man who murdered Bruce Lee, the master of the death touch. Yeah, so Dimmak. Yeah, so it was a death touch of a certain master coming out of the blue, and he just touched Bruce Lee on the shoulder or where else, and with a delay of some hours or some days, Bruce Lee fell ill and died. Yeah, it's like the Sheng Fui, Hui Sheng, and all the other stuff. Yeah, sorry. So, coming back to Bruce Lee's so-called mistress, Betty Ting Pei, if you believe that she's an ordinary woman, you are absolutely incorrect, because the first car appeared in China belonged to Betty Ting Pei's family. So she's coming from an extremely wealthy family. Question: why must a girl from an extremely wealthy family be in B-movies? Huh? I don't think that she has a problem with money then, when her family is among very rich people in China or Taiwan. Ting grew up in an affluent and privileged environment. She's not the ordinary girl. Just before knowing Lee, Ting was going to get married in Switzerland. And that's another thing, huh? In Switzerland. Do you really believe in coincidences? Do you really? You do? I don't. And she did not get married in Switzerland. So she flew to Switzerland, and then she realized, oh, it's quite cold here. Come on. Oh. She asked, really, what do you think is the real reason? Oh, it's also great to answer a question with a question, huh? So if you do not want to answer, you just raise a question. Of course it naturally happened. It can't be other reasons, can I? But I don't think it's possible that a young man would suddenly die. If he did not fall into some sudden disease. He must have a heart problem, he said. Heart stopped. She said, he must have a heart problem. Heart stopped. Wow, I said, great. Theory number 15, huh? Now he did not drink too much water. He was not overheating. He had not an equisiac. What else did we do? There are so many. Everybody has his own theory. It's interesting. She said, and she's right with that, I think he grew up in poor health because he got his nickname Siphon. That name was picked for his poor health. No, I don't think so. If he was in poor health and he exhausted himself by using electricity or something else, he would naturally arouse heart problems. See? You can have a clue for every theory. I haven't counted it. I think I'm with theory 14 or 15 at least. Isn't that interesting? Everybody has a certain theory. Ting's saying was approved by Lee's other friends. This training way destroys the harmony of humans' nervous system and psychological system. That's strange, because these devices that Bruce Lee is using, they are legal until this very day. What leads into my conclusion that they could not be that harmful, as they have been claimed here on television. Yeah, of course, that is not Bruce Lee, and that is most probably also not the training device that he used, but what do I know? I once asked somebody who has seen that original Bruce Lee's electricity muscle stimulation apparatus, but he was not able to provide me with a picture. I would really love to see it, but I have looked it up from that time at the end of the 60s, start of the 70s. What else shall I say to this? That led to heart problems, sure. Can I recollect that on May the 10th, when he was in the dubbing room of Golden Harvest, he most probably was dubbing and was not having his electricity machine running. My. But maybe also this electricity machine has some DIMAC technology. When you are so superstitious, like some Chinese are, maybe this electricity muscle and heart problems, they occur quite later on. I have a hard time believing all that stuff that is being pushed forwarded into my face on the television. Sorry. Ting said Lee even exteriorized his sweat glands. Yes, but you can ask any prolific doctor that it has no effect on the sweating abilities of your body. You see? She's trying to deceive you. The training enables Lee to maintain superhuman strength and striking agility. No, he did not have any superhuman strength. He was still a human. He was a human, therefore he was sent to the hospital. If he was superhuman bred, then he would not need to go to the hospital. Isn't it too far-fetched? So martial arts master, karate master Jim Kelly said, I knew he often went on street with pistol. Yeah, that has a certain reason, because I think that he was threatened many times. Yeah. On May the 10th, Lee suddenly fainted and was rushed to a hospital. Yes, luckily. Yeah, and he was rushed to a hospital because he was not superhuman. He was human after all. Somebody says in a dubbing room, most likely a personnel from Golden Harvest, said, I remembered his lips were trembling badly, just like epilepsy attack. Yeah, that can have other causes, but you see this acoustic absorbing stuff here, so it is most likely in a dubbing room. So, Dr. Wu says he was diagnosed as having an edema, encephaledema. If he were late for hospital for tens of minutes, he would have no chance to see any more people. Lee was saved and he intentionally concealed this accident from many people. Yeah, sure, it was bad promotion, including Ting. Ah, you have to believe it. Haha, you have to believe it. First, Raymond Chow introduced Betty Ting Pei to Bruce Lee, and Betty Ting Pei didn't know anything, but Raymond Chow did, and Raymond Chow did not tell anything to Bruce, Raymond Chow did not tell anything to Betty Ting, sure. He returned to the United States for a complete physical checkup. Yes, that's correct. Dr. Ricebord, that was. Unexpectedly, what do you know? 2 months later, the accident happened again. Yeah, what a coincidence. And then you know that is no coincidence when it happens again. Lee didn't got luck this time. Yeah, because even in the official frame of being found in Betty Ting Pei's home, they have delayed him, rushing him to the hospital on purpose, most likely. Can't pronounce it better than this. He indicated his favorite song was a transcription of Christina Rosselli's poem. Yeah, that's, we do not have to have that information here. After being found unconscious in his home. So that was the first one. So Raymond Chow came up with the idea to explain it to the press as if Bruce Lee had died in his home. But he didn't. That means only one thing, that he can only get through to this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if Linda Lee would have applied this theory and acknowledged that theory. Because Raymond Chow would have lost face if Linda Lee would have contradicted and said, no, that's wrong, he wasn't here. So that means that Raymond Chow and Linda Lee collaborated on the conspiracy of hiding the real cause of Bruce Lee's death. Because the official papers are that the ambulance took him from Betty Ting Pei's apartment. And Linda Lee and Raymond Chow, they were rushing to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So Linda knew that he was not at home when he was being rushed to the hospital. So Linda Lee is in it. There is only one possibility that she is in it. She is in covering up the death of her own husband because he was being found in Betty Ting Pei's apartment and not at home. In the absence of any additional accounts, this means that with the exception of approximately 3,000 in a Bank of Hong Kong checking account, 15,000 in a saving account, and 5,000 note from a sale of their Bel Air home, which in total wouldn't have paid for Bruce's funeral expenses, Linda Lee was penniless. There was, however, the 4,000 monthly living expense allotment that Lees had been receiving from Golden Harvest for the past 2 years. Surely that would pay the rent and put food on the Lee table while everyone figured out all these financial matters. Of course, one might suppose that the money could have been used for a legal retainer should Linda be inclined to employ the services of a powerful Hong Kong law firm. It didn't matter. On the day following Bruce's death and without any advance warning, Raymond Chow cancelled the Lee's living expense allotment and left town. If you have friends like this, you don't need any more enemies. It's all about the money. Oh, he's dead. Bang! Oh, he has a wife and 2 children. Who cares? It's all about for the money. Quote here from Econ Manifest. That is why equagesic theory is completely stupid. On July the 20th, just 10 weeks later, he experienced the exact same episode but does not make it to an hospital in time and dies, and they say it was because he took a headache tablet this day, completely ignoring the fact that he collapsed from the same incident, not having taken the headache tablet 10 weeks prior on May the 20th. That is incorrect. Sorry, that must be May the 10th, but the conclusion is correct. Yeah, so it can't be the equagesic. So what's it? Dr. Langford, the physician of Bruce Lee, said his pupils did not react. Yeah, because he was dead. And his neck seemed a bit rigid, at least part of the time. He says, now we know that Chinese generally, and specifically Southern Chinese, are known to have syndromes involving the blood supply of the brain, both the arteries and the veins, and I really thought that he had some type of vascular accident. But what defines a vascular accident? A cerebrovascular accident is the medical term for a stroke. A stroke is when blood flow to a part of your brain is stopped either by a blockage or a rupture of a blood vessel. There are important signs of a stroke that you should be aware of and watch out for. So it's stroke. We contacted St. Teresa's, that was on May the 10th, that was on May the 10th. We contacted St. Teresa's Hospital, which is the other large hospital. And then he was being transported to St. Teresa's Hospital there because they had no free room. When Dr. Langford examined Bruce Lee at the first incident in May the 10th, he immediately ordered intravenous injections of mannitol. The reason that Langford's choice of drugs is noteworthy is that mannitol is rarely used solely for the treatment of cerebral edema. Rather, it is an osmotic diuretic used primarily in barbiturate overdose. Where do we know that from? Maybe Marilyn Monroe would be a prime example of that. And to flush out the system of a potentially lethal excess of sodium, which many poisons can cause, to collect in the victim's kidneys. It is this excess sodium built up that produced the cerebral edema and convulsions. For this reason that Langford administered mannitol to Bruce Lee, specifically because Bruce was showing signs that he has been poisoned. This would explain the mysterious blood urea nitrogen BUN test. It wasn't a typographical error as Dr. Harold Karpman had initially suspected. Although a reading of 92 milligrams per milliliter is extremely high, it is consistent with a patient whose kidneys had gone into failure as a result of being poisoned. Poisoning Bruce Lee at this time in life would not have been that easy. According to Linda, during her husband's final months, he had stopped eating solid food and was existing miserably on carrot and apple juice. If this was true, If this was true, then the only way to have poison Bruce was to lace the one thing everybody knew he was eating, his marijuana. The question now arises, where did Bruce keep all his marijuana? This was not an insignificant amount, but a sizable stash that was being replenished on a frequent basis. Of course, the most central problem was that Bruce was potentially a multi-million show business property. Unquestionable, his drug use had to be of dire concern to many individuals, especially in that drug of choice was marijuana. Throughout the Orient in the early 70s, marijuana was a tantamount to being found with heroin in the United States. Witness Beatles star Paul McCartney, who nearly landed in prison after being discovered in Japan with a small amount of grass. McCartney was being busted in January 16, 1980 in Japan, not in Hong Kong, in Japan. And the Beatles, we are more popular than Jesus, John Lennon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you expect in an Antichrist world, huh? What do you expect? Huh? With his Satan's horns and 666, yeah, what do you expect? Yellow Submarine, by accident, of course, coincidentally, the name of one of Charles Manson's homes, no? Yellow Submarine. What a coincidence. This world is so much full of coincidences. No? Here, Paul McCartney speaks about his arrest in Tokyo, in Japan. Why Paul McCartney ended up spending 9 days in jail. Paul McCartney. Yeah, he said, I quit, I was in jail for 10 days. How did you get out? Yeah, must be with money, I think, huh? Yeah, but that's a problem with drugs, yeah. Some say and some think and some see drugs as a salvation bread, huh?
Yeah.
I found this picture last week and I thought to implement it because I really like that picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Not much has changed, no?
No.
No, there was too much money at stake here, literally millions. Somebody else had to handle this marijuana. We know that Bobby Baker brought it into Hong Kong, maybe other people as well, but what happened to it after that? Perhaps it was locked at Bruce's 500-pound floor safe at Cumberland Road, risky. What about Golden Harvest Studios? Because I have seen that letters, if they were authentic, that Bruce ordered Bob to send it to Wunegan. Yeah. Who was the keeper of the keys? There was all motive all around Bruce. Excess equates to opportunity. It's a vital piece of the puzzle. Motive, opportunity, method, poison. When Bruce Lee collapsed to the floor at Golden Harvest, remember, it happened at Golden Harvest the first time, and the second time it happened at Betty Ting Pei's apartment. Yeah, both affiliated to Raymond Chow, and Raymond Chow was present at both times. When Bruce collapsed at the floor at Golden Harvest and suddenly began convulsing and vomiting and gasping in a fight for his life, that one word poison just seems to hang in the air. Nothing else but a heart attack or stroke or a bullet acts this quickly to extinguish a life. One moment Bruce was desperately fighting for his life, and an hour later, after the mannitol had flushed his system, he miraculously returned to normal and walked out of the emergency room. Poison. What about Lee's autopsy? Did Dr. Lamb look for poison? He did superficially. Wordly, there are 9 million natural and synthetic chemicals deemed to be poisons. Yeah, so it's most likely impossible to detect the realist. That's a valid quote here. Campo Grandmaster Ed Parker from the United States must have known this when shortly after Bruce's death he was quoted as saying, quote, "Many of us do not know the inner thinkings and secrets of the Chinese herbalists. They have herbs for medicine, and they have ones we've never heard of." Everybody is a typo. It's not my typo. They have herbs for medicine, and they have ones we've never heard of for poison. I believe it was foul play that killed Bruce Lee. The reason why Bruce Lee was befriended with Betty Ting Pei is most likely the reference that officially, unofficially, who else knows, she reminded him of his girlfriend, of the Japanese girlfriend, Amy Sanwo. However, Linda, seen above, likes to blame Bruce's death on his weight loss by citing the exhaustive process that he put himself through during the making of Enter the Dragon. Oh, that is by coincidence, or not by coincidence, the same theory that Betty Ting Pei puts out on front of the television. However, he lost weight during the making of The Big Boss in Thailand, 1971, where he didn't eat well due to the lack of quality food, but he didn't pass out. In the 1980 interview for the Kick Illustrated magazine, Robert Klaus mentioned that Bruce always tried to keep his weight up during the making of Enter the Dragon by eating protein. Klaus also said that Bruce didn't pass out like he had on earlier film, even when filming in the mirror room, with the oppressive heat, if you remember that quote. He didn't say it in his interview, but Bruce passed out during the making of The Way of the Dragon, so 1 year before. According to stuntman Steve Lee Karting, this happened during a dubbing session where Bruce Lee was please help me out. Resuscitated.
Oh, resuscitated, yes.
Wow. Okay, I'll try. According to stuntman Steve Lee Karting, this happened during a dubbing session where Bruce Lee was resuscitated by electric shocks to his hamstrings. So, what's the connection with Bruce Lee and all the other people around him, which are all actors? But Raymond Chow, his producer, has a Machiavellian mind. Yeah, sure, it's all about the money. So he had to explain Bruce had injuries by stating that they were the byproduct of filming fight scenes. Ray claimed that Bruce collapsed at home by walking in his garden with Linda. And then you see that, oh yeah, maybe he gets the quote or the backup of Linda too, because it seems that they both are collaborating, yeah, because of the wrong place of death in the first place. Superstar Bruce Lee dies. When exposed, Ray retracted by stating that he was saving Linda from the swirl of gossip because somebody found out that he was being picked up at Betty Ting Pei's place and not at Linda's place. When exposed, Ray retracted by stating that he was saving Linda from the swirl of gossip despite there already being tabloids about Betty before Bruce died. It was Raymond who introduced Bruce to the actress known as Ting Pei. Aha! And then you know why. Because Betty Ting Pei never, and that is pictured as Amy Sambo, not Betty Ting Pei never was in a picture together with Bruce Lee. So why should Bruce Lee incorporate her on the Game of Death? Why? Because he could have had the opportunity to incorporate her in the movie The Way of the Dragon or in Enter the Dragon or in the early stages of Game of Death, but he did not do this. So it is absolutely a BS theory that they were talking about the script of Game of Death, because Game of Death was more than a half completed according to Brandon Bruce Lee. So therefore you can imagine that the script was already been finished. And also he had 3 occasions to put Betty Ting Pei into any picture, and he did not do this. So come on, this is it's a frame. You shall believe it that they delayed to call the police or the medicine, the hospital, because of the affair of Betty Ting Pei. And I think that nothing is correct here. Lee was smitten because she resembled a rap Japanese ex-girlfriend of his named Amy Sambo. And I don't think that it is so, that this Amy Sambo is so similar to her. I think there is another reason which I will soon point out. This is an interview of Kung Fu Genius. A genius is a moral spirit who watches each person from birth. An exalted natural mental ability. Okay, a person of natural intelligence or talent. So on this channel, on the Kung Fu Genius, Matt Polly appears, who has written the biggest biography of Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee alive. He says on that channel, he had a rare chance to interview Raymond Chow. It's one of my things I'm most happy with. I thought, okay. The Kung Fu Jesus podcast. And Matthew Pauly says, he was seeking at that time, he was very into Zen Buddhism. So you know that he's not a Christian. Okay? He says, when Bruce Lee went back to the United States, it was less than 10 years after the Second World War had ended. And that is not true. Bruce Lee went back to San Francisco in 1959. He had to be 18 years old. He was born 27th of November 1940, plus 18 means he was 18 at the 27th of November 1958. So he went in 1959, he went to the United States. And the Second World War has ended in 1945. So it was 14 days. So it was 14 years and not less than 10 years. So that's the first thing, but just a minor thing. He said, following me personally, I was raised Catholic, Irish Catholic. Yeah, interesting that later on he found himself being into Zen Buddhism. So you can imagine that he found Catholicism not to his liking, and he later switched on to Buddhism. He said, I have a real interest in Buddhism, and so my views bounced around. I have a sort of universalist view of religion. That is interesting, huh?
A sort of universalist view?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he means a sort of Catholic view.
Yes. That each one offers a pathway to the divine, and it doesn't really matter.
Gnosticism.
When the Bible, on the other hand, in John 14:6, clearly points out that the only way to everlasting life, and that may be also very interesting to Mr. Polly, if he ever comes across this session, which I highly doubt. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one cometh unto the Father but by me. And in total opposition, Matthew Polly says, each religion has offers a pathway to the divine, and it doesn't really matter. So I think that he's not very intensely looking for the truth, at least not in religion. Which one you follow, as long as you follow one, are dedicated. Idea of trying to find a sort of enlightenment by whichever means. Really interesting, huh? So it's all about enlightenment.
But he said it's a sort of universal approach. Yeah. So it must be approved by the Catholic Church in order to be valid. Right.
An idea to find a sort of enlightenment by whichever means, sort of strict Catholic by any means. I kind of have a mystical view of religion.
That's very revealing, isn't it, Michael? Oh, here we go.
So Matthew Polly, that was an interview on LDP podcast. And on the Kung Fu Genius, this very Matthew Polly says the following. Did Raymond kill Bruce? Oh, so it's inside the family to this day. They believe this. Yeah. So the family of Bruce Lee believes he was killed. Yeah? Although he had a rare chance to interview Raymond Chow. It's one of the right things I'm most happy with. I'm most happy. Sure. And he said he stretched all his violence predator sensors at him. I'm not making it up. His violence predator sensors at him, and it's an imperfect measurement, like radar or what else, I do not recall. That is just here the automatic subtitle generator. I spent years tuning that sensor. What I got from him was that this is a guy who, if you handed him $100 and asked for it back, you would get 80. Speaking about Raymond Chow. But if you were sitting there and he had a knife to your throat, he wouldn't cut. He's not, there are guys who are thieves and there are guys who are killers. He's not a killer there, he just doesn't have any of that vibe. So Matthew Polly has a mystical sense of religion, and he has a violence predator sensor. And he says, no, he is very untrustful when it comes to money, but he doesn't kill anybody. And this was before DVDs, like If Your Star Died, etc. So that was before DVDs. So if your star died, then you go also down the drain because you can't make any more money. And his interviewer, the genius, the Kung Fu genius, that's the guy. He's very talented. He has a very broad amount of guests also. It's a very prominent channel on YouTube. He says he was not a man who would kill his golden goose. And that is an invalid argument, because we have already been discovered that Bruce Lee wanted to leave Raymond Chow in 1972. At the end of 1972, he wrote that to Bob Baker in one of these so-called drug letters, and and he wanted to take 20 stuntmen with him, and he wanted to go back to settle down in Seattle once again. So he never would have been the golden goose again after Enter the Dragon. Yeah, and also when it comes down to make a movie in Hong Kong, he had also switched to Run Run Shaw already, because he had made test shots for the other company, the big company, because he had switched to Run Run Shaw already. Yeah, so that's an invalid argument here. Yeah, so if somebody of them had died, had killed him, they were making any more money. This is an invalid argument. And I have a second argument from the commentator to that video called Edwin1135. What Matthew Polly doesn't emphasize is Chow was losing, so Raymond Chow was losing his cash cow. Bruce only had a 3-picture deal with Golden Harvest, which Bruce did these 3 movies back to back, well under 2 years. Chow saw his grip was loosening on Bruce. They argued over opening scene of Enter the Dragon, as Joey Chan said. Chow tried to use Chen and then the fight scene with Bruce as a power play to keep Bruce by signing Chen. Polly seems to dismiss the lowly Joey Chen and interview Shannon, who was 4 years old, and Linda Robert Lee. Remember, Bruce had more kinship with stuntmen and the ordinary folks that weren't starstruck and were like-minded in martial arts. So Joey's story is very plausible. It's just not like he's on a high-profile person Polly would interview. After all, who dies from prescription meds? Raymond drops off Bruce and Betty's, goes hang out with George Lazenby to establish an alibi. Bruce gets killed, they make up a story about a headache and pill. Bruce calls Raymond, it's done. Raymond calls his doctor instead of an ambulance. By the way, no mention about his doctor going over to Betty's apartment. Bruce is taken to a farther hospital. According to the administrating doctor, Bruce was struggling to breathe. They tried to intubate him. Why intubate if he's dead on arrival? Had a swollen neck and had muscle movements, probably uncontrolled, so they had a harsh time working on him. All according to the doctor's interview, Raymond had him killed. There are numerous flaws in that approach of Edwin, but something is right here. He says Polly seems to dismiss the lowly Joey Chen, who is affiliated with Bruce Lee, which we will now see, and interview Shannon, and interview, of course, Raymond Chow. And now comes the answer of the Kung Fu Genius podcast. He says, "You lost me at listening to Joey Chan." This is an ad hominem argument. It is not an argument on the case, but it is an attack on the character. And that's most likely the case, and most often the case, when you have no more arguments or you don't want to get into an argument with someone, because you like to attack the character and to get rid of any argument at all. An ad hominem means a fallacious argument, It's a rhetorical strategy where the speaker attacks the character, motive, or some other attribute of the person making an argument rather than attacking the substance of the argument itself. This avoids genuine debate by creating a diversion to some irrelevant but often highly charged issue. The most common form of this fallacy is A makes a claim, B asserts that I do not read that. Many contemporary politicians routinely use ad hominem attacks, which can be encapsulated due to a derogatory nickname for a political opponent. So it's not the argument, they just want to destroy the character, which is very interesting. Aristotle is credited with raising the distinction between personal and logical arguments. That's a kind of sophistic, by the way. And we know who is using that kind of arguments. These are politicians. People with sophistry and casuistry are often related to Jesuits. On 22nd November in Hong Kong, Bruce wrote a letter to Bob Baker where he disclosed that he might consider no longer doing business with Chow since he lacks the right education. So, not any argument, there is no valid argument that Raymond Chow would have lost his golden goose, because he has lost his golden goose already. Bruce tricked himself into thinking he was superhuman, while he proved the American doctors wrong in 1970 about a sex-inflicted back injury prevented him from being able to kick again. Bruce couldn't really prove them wrong in 1973 about not being able to take drugs again. Yeah, and Tom Bleecker says no, his back injury is not about any training or what else, it's about sexual intercourse. Yeah. Bruce had one leg shorter. So, the Kung Fu genius has a problem with Joey Chen. Joey Chen is a small actor in Hong Kong business and was befriended with Bruce Lee. But he has no problem with the worldwide known author Matthew Polly, when Matthew Polly says he has violence predator senses and that Raymond Chow did not kill Bruce Lee. It's interesting, huh? Because he is very polite to his guests, even if their guests say they have violence predator sensors. I would advise Matthew Polly, which of course I like very much, for also I thank him very much about writing this biography, although I do not agree about his conclusions with Heatstroke. I would advise Matthew Polly not to write any more books again, and to apply to ask for a supreme job in the Hong Kong police business with his violence predator sensors. What do you think of it, Brett?
Yeah, it's all BS.
What I'm telling you is that if somebody tells you a story that he has violence predator sensors...
Yeah, he's bullshitting you.
Why does anybody with that ability write books? You could have had a career like Dirty Harry, like in a homicide business. I'm trying to remain my continence and remain serious, you see?
Mm-hmm.
You see all the contradictions here? Kung Fu Genius is not attacking Matthew Polly about his claim of violence predator sensors, but he's totally character attacking Joey Chen.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, he's not listening to both sides.
Yes.
Before coming to a conclusion.
Yes.
He's just ignoring the other side. Nah, that's all.
Yeah, maybe he knows the other side, but he does not want to mention it. He does not want to get into any argument.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you have 10,000 of subscribers, you don't have any time to get into any arguments, of course. Yeah, but on the other hand, you lost me at listening to Joey Chen. You see, you find somebody not credible. Oh, please help me out. Credible?
Yeah, right. Yeah, not the credentials or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, and then somebody writes a book and tells you that he's got violence predator sensors, and you find him credible. From the script, Bruce Lee was murdered by pop cult master. Linda has attested to her husband having a foul temper that went well beyond the verbal scale, which she admitted in the 1971 interview. Even in a Linda-authorized Dragon the Bruce Lee story, he goes into a blind rage. In the month of his death, Bruce pushed Raymond Chow, remember the golden goose of Raymond Chow over a couch. In summary, he threatened Lo Wei, who was the head of a triad, with a knife. When Linda Lee was present and other people, he pushed Raymond Chow over a couch, and he threatened the editor of a newspaper when Raymond Chow also was present. There was something going on with Bruce Lee in July. Bruce confided to his youngest brother Robert about it. Wu Negan, his butler, witnessed the push, but he has taken his side of the story to the grave. There is a saying about the last straw that broke the camel's back, but you have to wonder what bone that Ray broke when Bruce pushed him. The final week of Bruce Lee. According to the Matthew Police, which I just mentioned, 2018 biography, George Lazenby was nowhere in sight. So they're referring that Nancy Kwan incident where Nancy said, yeah, you should about your affair, that's not good that you have an affair with Betty Ting Pei, and you also have to question that. That was at least on Thursday, July the 19th. According to Nancy, Bruce was constantly berating Raymond Chow. Hours later, Bruce had dinner with a Chinese cameraman named Charles Low. Later that day, Bruce had a phone call with June Rhee. The latter lived in Washington, which is 13 hours behind Hong Kong. He remembered that Bruce told him about having just been in an argument with director Huan Feng about who should get top billing in what when Taekwondo strikes. Bruce wanted June, whereas Huan wanted Angelo Mao, his goddaughter. 1980, Sterling Siliphant, the famous writer who got an Oscar, said, Psy called Bruce on a Tuesday or Wednesday and made a date for us to fly out Friday that week to spend the weekend with Bruce in Hong Kong to discuss what we needed to do to put him and the Silent Flute back together again. Bruce had agreed to that meeting. The day before we would have flown out, he died. Sterling indirectly said that Bruce Lee died on a Thursday. There was one English-language newspaper in Hong Kong which quoted the Hong Kong police as claiming that Bruce died on Thursday night in Hong Kong time. In US time, it would be Thursday morning. Someone, possibly Bruce's wife Linda, would have needed to call Sterling before he got on that plane on Friday in US time. In the 1993 documentary titled The Curse of the Dragon, James Coburn recalled a phone call that he had with Sterling Siliphant, where the latter told him that Bruce's death was reported in the local US papers. This would have been Saturday. James remembered telling Sterling that he couldn't believe Bruce was dead because he had a phone call with him a couple of days prior, the implication being that Bruce didn't sound like he was in bad health. James would have said something about Bruce feeling a little under the weather if it was true. Although most Americans found out on July the 21st, Warner Brothers president Ted Ashley sent his condolences to Bruce's widow in a telegram that was dated July the 20th. However, the official notification of his death was revealed so late on that day that it only got printed on Saturday morning, hence why you have stories of Hong Kong people who woke up to the news of Bruce Lee's death. Wing Chun classmates William Chung claimed that Bruce died 2 days before it was printed in Hong Kong newspapers. 21 minus 2 makes the 19th of July. As such, there is a Hong Kong film director who talked about meeting Bruce Lee at the Shaw Brothers film studio 4 days before he died. Monday was off limits because Bruce was hanging out with Chuck Norris. You know that guy? Whom Bruce Lee had shown the sign of protection, so to speak. If you are superstitious, the Manu Cornuta, which is actually the curse of Satan and the devil's horns. But Bruce Lee was just superstitious. Bruce decided on Wednesday, July the 18th, to have Cy Whiterob and Sterling Siliphant to fly to Hong Kong on Friday, and then George Lazenby would have said something about it. You then have to wonder where Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that's the 7-foot-something guy of Game of Death, fits all into this, because he claimed that he was 12 hours too late to meet Bruce in Hong Kong. Kareem heard about the news of his death while he was at the Singapore airport. There is no time difference between Hong Kong and Singapore, so he would have heard about Bruce passing on Saturday, July the 21st. Kareem didn't mention Lazenby either. This brings us back to Thursday, July the 19th. Raymond Chow and Bruce Lee had a lunch meeting with Nancy Kwan where the intention was to sign her up for the female lead in the Game of Death. Oh, and I thought it was Betty Ting Pei. According to Matthew Polly's biography, George Lazenby was nowhere in sight. Yeah, it seems that he just served as an alibi. Hours later, Bruce had dinner with a Chinese cameraman named Charles Lowe, and then later with Jun Rhee, the famous Taekwondo American. Yeah. To help you visualize the following anecdote, I would like to establish that Hong Kong is 3 hours behind Australia, but 1 hour ahead of Indonesia. Director Brian Trenchard Smith said, quote, "On July the 20th, 1973, I boarded a Cathay Pacific flight from Sydney to Hong Kong to shoot a documentary about Bruce Lee, a new Asian superstar I'd become aware of in a previous visit to the colony, who at the time was still virtually unknown to Western audiences. The forthcoming release of his first American-made action picture, Enter the Dragon, would change all that. I had negotiated with producer Raymond Chow to interview him for a wide-ranging documentary on Asian martial arts movies to be entitled World of Kung Fu. In my briefcase was a 6-page outline I had written about a Chinese Dirty Harry-type cop sent to Sydney." Oh, that is interesting. Didn't I mention Dirty Harry some 2 sessions ago? Who then goes after the local crime lord, causing major mayhem. Arrival at Kai Tak Airport confirmed the newspaper headlines I had seen at the Jakarta refueling stop. Bruce Lee dies. So, if the date is not correct, it is just the date, the 20th of July, where the official death record has been printed. So most likely he died not on Friday the 20th, but on Thursday the 19th, according to these sources. I'm just quoting sources. I can't read Chinese, and I'm not affiliated with anybody whom I have mentioned. I'm just quoting sources. But that would mean, in the end, that the entire story of Bruce Lee visiting Betty Ting Pei's apartment to talk her into a role of Game of Death, Lazenby and all the stuff is just pure bullshit, as my American colleague always likes to say. That means, Brett, that it's a total frame.
Yes.
Nothing is correct. And you have to connect the dots on your own. Therefore, I would like to introduce to you Joey Chen, because we would like to see both sides of the coin. Because if you ask Wikipedia, they would tell you, yeah, have been found in Betty Ting Pei's apartment. Yeah, that's the problem with it. Yeah, if you just rely on mass media, you don't have to connect the dots. You have a happy life with many, many pleasures, but you don't make yourself any good. Because you don't want to know the truth, obviously. Of course, I do that in English. Yeah, Friday, July, he was in Hong Kong to have dinner with George Lazenby and la 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 la. Of course, they have to mention the 20s because of the certificate of death. Let's get back on. The video GOLD, Game of Little Dragon sequel to Enter the Dragon pre-production, is a video series of Joey Chen. He said he was been sent 40 days or so before the death of Bruce Lee. He was been sent by Bruce Lee to Rome, to Hong Kong, from Hong Kong to Rome. Rome, Italy airport news TV reported that he was dead in Hong Kong, and that is Joey Chen. He said, "If I knew that he was going to be killed, I would have stayed behind." Over his dead, but just like what Strawling sealed up and told me, okay, now's the time to tell the true story about the death of Bruce Lee. Yeah, he said, Siliphant told me, so Sterling Siliphant, that's the same guy which has been mentioned here by the Popcode Master in my script, who implies that it was Thursday when Bruce Lee died and not Friday. Yeah, and he's also referring to Sterling Siliphant. Yeah, it's very interesting. You see that these subtitles are sometimes incorrect, but you can look at that video, Bruce Lee, The Story of His Death, Part 2, Foul Play by Joey Chen. You won't lose me at Joey Chen because I'm treating every individual equally. I don't care if somebody is a prolific author, if somebody is a prominent doctor. I don't care. I just want to sort out the facts. So he has been said it was time to tell the true story about the death of Bruce Lee. Yeah? He says, the 22nd of November 1971. I said, no, 22nd of November once again.
Yeah, right.
So he says, on the 22nd of November 1971, Cathay Production, which is the distribution of Bruce Lee, I think it was in Singapore, they sent him to work in Hong Kong together with Bruce Lee. And that was important. And he was on some Raymond Chow, and the Bruce Lee contract ended after Enter the Dragon. And you see, therefore, the argument of Kung Fu Genius is invalid when it comes down nobody would kill his golden goose. And I think that's one of the reasons that some people do not like Joey Chen. He says that the Cathay Picture boss of Singapore was the boss of Joey, and he sent him to Hong Kong. And Little Dragon, so Bruce Lee, was offering a new contract when Bruce Lee does not want to sign with Raymond Chow. Bruce Lee went to see Run Shaw, so the opposite film company, the biggest film company in Hong Kong, the rival film production. He says Bruce Lee wanted to come to Singapore because Singapore was extremely freaky and flipped out for Bruce Lee pictures then. It was a big boost. He was a superstar in Asia, in Malaysia, and Singapore, and Thailand. And he said that he was hearing that Raymond Chow was angry. He was burning like crazy. He went nuts. He went to kill Bruce Lee. Then Bruce Lee went to Shaw Brothers. He signed to Shaw and wanted to settle matters with Raymond Chow to switch to Run Shaw. Yeah, so he wanted to switch the companies from Golden Harvest Raymond Chow, Leonard Hu, Betty Ting Pei, George Lazenby, yeah, to Run Shaw, so the rival company. Bruce Lee wanted to make it in Hollywood. You remember his definite chief aim was to be in Hollywood, the superstar in Hollywood. The first Asian superstar. Not in Hong Kong, in Hollywood. Therefore, he claims that Bruce Lee has sent him, together with the director King Hu, who could not speak any English, to Rome to get in touch with Charles Bronson and Ingrid Bergman. And I think that he says that Ingrid Bergman was his godmother, if I remember correctly. So Bruce Lee sent both of them to Rome 40 days before his death to get in touch with an extremely famous movie director in Italy. The name is Carlo Ponti. He's the husband of Sophia Loren, which was one of the most beautiful women, blah, 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 blah. So Joey Chen said, at the 20th of July 1973 at 7:11 p.m. Hong Kong time, Bruce Lee was dead, and no coincidence, because I remember what Raymond Chow said. Not to me, to the other people, to somebody told me that when Bruce Lee went to see Run Shaw, so Raymond Chow's rival company, and then somebody reported to Raymond Chow, so obviously a spy from Shaw Studios to Raymond Chow, that Bruce Lee was going to switch company, and the first thing that Raymond Chow said was, "Over my dead body." In the nutshell, that's the testimony of Joey Chen.
Wow. That says a lot.
That says a lot, while Joey Chan has been attacked by character, argumentum ad hominem.
Yep.
When you have an author which makes a big biography about Bruce Lee and is interviewing Raymond Chow, that tells a lot that you don't want to mention Joey Chan. Popcult Master adds to this. It was a vengeful plot to make a prestigious kung fu film with the biggest studio in Southeast Asia on his terms. Run Shaw has already sent a correspondent to name his price. Various writers began preparing scripts and names of directors began to toss about. Ko Yuan was said to have the uppermost advantage because of his acquaintanceship with Bruce, who was to be directed by Cheng Khan instead of Chang Che. Raymond Chow, a former Shaw Brothers employee who can be found on Google, was well aware of the Shaws tampering with Golden Harvest's biggest cash cow. So don't come with that argument that Golden Harvest would have lost his cash cow. They have lost Bruce Lee already. Working for Shaw Brothers as a production cost and pay rate that Golden Harvest could not match would have meant the end for Raymond Chow. There goes the next big motive. But as Bruce Lee died, Golden Harvest could then continue distributing the movies, could continue having all the shares, benefiting from it, could continue to work on the Game of Death unreleased movie, which is very interesting because in that Game of Death movie, which then finally, I think it was 1978 when it has been published, is very interesting because there is no George Lazenby. Yeah, but there is a certain other actor, which has also already been spoken of, which has been affiliated with James Dean, who has been shot dead then. Officially, he has been shot dead, his new wife, and then himself. But you know how these things work out. Maybe he knew too much, I do not know, but you see, the testimony of Joey Chan, I don't think that I would have missed out that one. Not to mention a truly tremendous loss of face, remember? The Chinese loss of face, being that it was he who gave Lee his shot to superstardom. A Shaw production would have been more lavish than the Hollywood glamour that Enter the Dragon was meant to be. At every level inside the production of Enter the Dragon, Run Shaw had people who reported information on the project, which means spies working on a spy movie, because Enter the Dragon was actually a spy movie. It was like a Chinese... James Bond? Run Shaw had informants at every level of the production team of Enter the Dragon was well aware of what was happening in the rival camp. While he said publicly that the film would never be made, privately he might well have hoped that it would ruin Raymond Chow, perhaps seizing an opportunity to make mischief. Shaw invited Robert Klaus and Fred Weintraub to dinner, so he invited the director of Enter the Dragon to dinner at his opulent house in his studio grounds, where they were met at high gates and escorted up the long sweeping drive by his armed uniformed guards. At the long dinner table, Shaw sat next to his associate, the wily Mona Fong, other guests, etc. Run believed that the movie may not finish due to the difficulties between the oddly coupled Hong Kong and US studios. Before getting into the film industry, Raymond Chow worked for Taiwan's equivalent to the CIA, National Security Bureau, meaning he could cover his tracks. This is according to Chang Che, so it's a director, memoir. You see why I think there is so many similarity between Bruce Lee and John F. Kennedy now. I have to trust the author here. I don't want to spend so much time in reading this book too, but the bureau mentioned, the National Security Bureau in Taiwan, is very interesting because the bureau on Wikipedia was nicknamed China CIA. The National Security Bureau was involved in the 1980s murder of lawyer and opposition politician, etc., and his family. Raymond Chow and Golden Harvest. Raymond Chow, by the way, the director, started at Hong Kong Voice of America, is a United States government-founded international radio station. What a coincidence. May I also remind you that Betty Ting Pei, for just a coincidence reason, is coming out of Taiwan, and Raymond Chow has introduced Betty Ting Pei to Bruce Lee, and I think now that Brett can add one and one together why Raymond Chow has introduced Betty Ting Pei to Bruce Lee.
Oh, jeez.
Huh? What's your conclusion?
Oh, it's not a very pretty picture, is it, Michael?
No, but she was used to spy on Bruce Lee.
Ah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So this American radio station here, broadcast service that serves at United States federal government, official institution for non-military external broadcasting. So you can assume that he worked together with the American Secret Service for decades. And he used to work for Shaw Brothers before he was getting his own company, Golden Harvest, started. Then you can think that he had many, many friends in Run Shaw's company as well. So that means he was getting to know that Bruce Lee is going to sign to Run Shaw, his rival company, and that he would lose his so-called cash cow. When I went into that particular video here of Raymond Chow and Golden Harvest, the author of that video says he would love to cover more about Raymond Chow's childhood, but I couldn't seem to find any reliable sources. Yeah, of course, if he really was affiliated with the American Secret Service called CIA, then he could cover his tracks. And this is the second quote here from a different author who said that, yeah, that there is no official records of Raymond Chow for a certain period of his life. Yeah, most reliable sources, there are none, because he was most likely affiliated with the American Secret Service. Raymond played Cupid because Lee's two-picture deal was coming to an end in early 1972, when Betty Ting Pei was making her mark as a teenage dancer in Taiwan. Yeah, because Raymond Chow worked for the Taiwan bureau. She bonded with a Taiwanese gangster named Chen Chi Lee. In her teenage years in Taiwan, before Raymond Chow set her up to, most likely, spy on Bruce Lee. What is about that gangster of Chen Chi Lee? He was a member of the Bamboo Union Group, the same Taiwanese triad that martial arts movie stars Jimmy Wang Yu aligned himself with. When Betty moved to Hong Kong to work for Shaw Brothers, it was Ray who signed her. Oh, interesting. So Ray is working for the Taiwanese CIA bureau. Ray is signing Betty Ting Pei to Shaw Brothers, and Ray is then introducing Betty to Bruce. Wow. When Jimmy left Shaw Brothers for Golden Harvest in 1970, Run Shaw stipulated that he was no longer allowed to make films in Hong Kong. Naysayers will say that the truth would have come out by now, but you have to account for the mysterious absence of Richie Edwards and Jimmy Hoffa. Some people know what happened to their bodies, but that doesn't mean they are going to come out with the truth, even on their deathbeds. Ray initially didn't want Bruce to do Enter the Dragon because he didn't want to lose him to the United States studios. However, Enter the Dragon was more than Lee's chance to be a Hollywood movie star. It was his chance to prove that he couldn't easily have played David Carradine's Kwang Chung Caine in example, A Serene Master. The Way of the Dragon would inspire Shaw Brothers to collaborate with Italian production companies. Hence the quote of Joey Chan that he wants to meet up with Carlo Ponti in Italy with Charles Bronson and Ingrid Bergman. These are two highly ranked Hollywood stars. Charles Bronson, come on. Everybody knows Charles Bronson. Ray used Bruce to make a name for himself overseas by giving interviews to the Hong Kong press. He did this by stating that Bruce was like a stupid child who owed his success to Ray's fatherly advice, and that was having an extreme bad effect on their relationship. Ray claimed to be the puppet master to Bruce Senseless puppet, but this backfired. Warner Brothers were not interested in Ray's goldenly harvested drag, so dirt. Yeah, this is a German word for dirt. Bruce felt betrayed. Chaplin Chang recalled that Bruce has a tendency to hurl mother prefix slurs at Ray's face, and this was before Ray tried to prevent Enter the Dragon from happening. Lee intended for his Global Harvest offshoot company Concord to co-produce with Shaw Brothers after Enter the Dragon came to an end. And that would also prove Joey Chan correct. Maybe the source of that is Joey Chan. I don't know. But what I know is it is most likely that with all the stress that Bruce Lee had with Raymond Shaw, that if he would have got an offer from his rival company, Run Shaw Pictures, then he would settle it because he wanted to have $10 million. Before he could fully defect, Ray died after the post-production of Enter the Dragon came to an end. In a posthumous interview, Ray stated that he didn't view the footage of the Game of Death for a long time because he was too upset. That's odd considering that he sent a camera crew around to film his dead so-called friends home for a documentary titled Bruce Lee, the Man and the Legend. And may I add to that, that also Raymond Shaw had also the entire footage of the Bruce Lee funeral incorporated into the last movie, The Game of Death. How obvious is that he wanted to make most money out of it? They also filmed the grieving Lee family, the funeral services, Bruce's corpse, and Ray escorting Bruce's widow to the airport. These cinematic grave robbers returned to film more shots of Bruce's house, and the removal man stripped the place. In a matter of months, the so-called tribute to the late Lee was being shown in Hong Kong cinemas. So it's all about the money. I've never bought, the author said, into the story about Ray working with Bruce on the script of The Game of Death on the day that he died. It was already finalized, and it was complexly detailed in a 2001 John Little book called The Warrior's Journey. So Raymond is obscuring the fact because he needed an alibi to avoid prosecution. The exegesic excuse for Lee's passing at hogwash. The medication that he took for his headache at Betty Ting's apartment, Beverly Hills, was similar to the meds which he was taking for his back pain. Cortisone became his Viagra. Also, I have the account of Tom Bleecker, who said that he had a prescription for exegesic in 1972, and he did not have then brain edema. I have a hard time believing that a single tablet caused Lee's demise when, a few months prior, he collapsed yet had not taken the drug. Too coincidentally, Ray was there on both occasions. My, what a world. And it's also very strange that Bruce Lee wanted to go back to Rome because he wanted to do an Eastern spaghetti movie or something like this, if I remember correctly. And he named his own company Concord, like the Roman goddess Concordia means harmony in Latin. Yeah, so he was so much influenced by his La Salle College and the Saint-François Xavier College, the Jesuit college. And it's unbelievable. He knew the Ave Maria. He was much influenced by Thomas Aquinas' philosophy. He did not know that he was so much influenced, I think. He was never a free man because he was also indoctrinated, as all of us are or were. And this Concordia, also in Rome, has a symbol like a cornucopia, is a symbol of prosperity, so a full horn. She was paired with Hercules and Mercury, representing security and luck. And there's a Concord, which is very interesting, a Concord prison experiment from 61 to 63, where the use of psychoactive drug psilocybin, derived from psilocybin mushrooms combined with psychotherapy, which could inspire prisoners to leave their antisocial lifestyles behind once they were released. How well it worked was to be judged by comparing the recidivism rate of subjects who received psilocybin with the average for other Concord inmates, which is very interesting when you compare that quote of the Concord prison experiment with that allegedly drug letter of Bruce Lee. What do we find here, Brad?
Oh, what? Psilocybin, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry if I mispronounced it.
That's okay.
Yeah, but it's really interesting, huh? When you see there's a Concord prison experiment, he named his company Concord, and they used psilocybin. Interesting, huh? So, What a world. Linda's second husband, Tom Bleecker, claimed that the box office receipt of The Way of the Dragon was falsely inflated. This was to hide the flagrant fact that protection money was being laundered to the triads, and from whom? From Golden Harvest, Leonard Ho, and Raymond Chow to the triads. Bruce wanted to take Ray to court. Oh, you can imagine, huh? You can imagine that he only had enemies.
Yep.
According to his interviews at the United States Death by Misadventure DVD, Charles Lowe, as known as Luck Ching, claimed that this was the day when he last saw Bruce. It was Charles, and not Raymond, who Bruce was going to have dinner with on the next day, speaking the 20s. He could not have two dinners at the same time. Okay. Charles Lowe, which was a cameraman on Enter the Dragon, says that Bruce Lee was going to have dinner with him the next day. So the entire story of Betty Ting Pei apartment is a frame. At this juncture, I should note that he ended up being one of the cameramen for Bruce Lee, the Man and the Legend. Remember one of the first sessions when Jackie Chan was claiming, yes, what's the story in the West of Bruce Lee died? There is no internet, nobody knows. He's dying somebody's house. Yeah. Most probably not on the 20th of July, most probably not in Betty Ting. And the problem is that he says, yes, my boss picked him up, so Raymond Chow picked him up. Yeah. But where? And why? To make matters worse, this is the alleged last letter from Bruce Lee. I will enhance it quite a bit. Letter goes to Adrian Marshall. And I know there's a second letter to, I think it was Bob Baker, but I have not got in touch with that letter. But that letter here is bad enough. It goes to Adrian Marshall. Dear Adrian, will be arriving in Los Angeles the 3rd of August. We have to discuss the deal with Hanna-Barbera, which they make comics like the Flintstones. Warner Brothers proposition, Titana's production company from Italy, that would also back up the claim of Joey Chan going to Italy, Andy's proposition from Hong Kong, which I explain to you when I see you in person, and etc. There are preliminary discussions that you can start without my presence. Where is that valid quote? However, I would prefer you and I sit down first and discuss the whole plan of the income tax situation before we proceed on. Also, I would like to meet you first before meeting with Raymond Chow, and then both of us will bear him out. By the way, there are other propositions of book, clothing, endorsement, etc. At any rate, I will talk to you personally when I see you. To take care, my friend. Very truly yours, Bruce. That letter is very interesting because it differs much of the drug letters, because it has been done by a typewriter. And the only thing you see here from Bruce Lee is the signature. And there are many people, among me, who think that this is a forgery. Because if the quotation of Tom Bleecker, the second husband of Bruce Lee's widow, Linda Lee, is correct, he says that Adrian Marshall was dismissed in 1972 and that Bruce Lee suspected that Adrian Marshall had an affair with his own wife. And out of the blue, on the last occasion on July the 20th, 1973, you know, July the 20th, 1973, so he had to die later to take this seriously here. He wanted to make everything with his lawyer Adrian Marshall. So Adrian Marshall later served as the lawyer for Linda Lee, obviously. And Tom Bleecker says that Adrian Marshall had a year-long affair with Bruce Lee's widow after this, or maybe during. What a world! Yeah. There is, of course, no letter that Bruce Lee would then regret his decision to fire Adrian Marshall in 1972. There is no letter in between to Adrian Marshall as far as I'm concerned. So this is the only letter which pops up exactly on the July the 20th. And we know that he wanted to make a deal with the Shaw brothers, but there are so many things not mentioning here. For example, Shaw brothers, or the falling out with Raymond Chow. Yeah, so I think that letter has been forged, that Adrian Marshall and Linda Lee could get on with the belongings of Bruce Lee. Back to the Adrian Marshall caricature, chapter 14 in the book of T-Money of Tom Bleecker is when we find out that Ellen Lee, which is the synonym of Linda Lee, was having an affair with Paul when Andy died. Yeah, Paul is the synonym for Adrian. Ellen is the synonym for Linda. Someone has typed on the TOTO, I can't remember what that is. Marshall's claims of having the last letter has been debated. His law firm has stated that they do not have the posted date from the post office or the original envelope. From Tapper Talk, Bruce Lee lives from Bruce Lee's last letter, real or fake? Who believes Bruce typed this letter to Adrian Marshall on the day that he died? Let's hear your thoughts. There is another letter that had never been posted. I wonder what that letter is. I really don't know if it is fake or what else. Nobody knows a thing. Bleecker on their T-Money in chapter 9. Bleecker reveals his true opinion on Linda as a potential suspect by citing the same reasons as many fans have, and he was been married to Linda Lee for 2 years, and he had access to many documents. So his word has more weight than many other people, I say. Tom Bleecker reveals his true opinion on Linda as a potential suspect by citing the same reasons as many fans have, in example, the affairs, rumors of a divorce, can you imagine? And profiting from the merchandising following the insurance scam. Because, of course, Linda Lee knew that Bruce Lee was doing drugs. And she had to deny it, even in the court trial, to get the money of the insurance companies. In real life, Tom denied his true feelings because fiction is a way to express yourself without being sued. For example, Michael Jackson's providing the basis for Michael Jefferson in South Park. In chapter 10, Frank receives, so that is Tom, receives a phone call from a stranger named Raymond Wong. No, this is not a reference to Raymond Chow. Anyway, Wong tells Frank that he is the husband of Andy's former mistress, Tiana Wu, which is the equivalent of Betty Ting. Sorry if I mix you up. You would think that Tom would have named her Beatrice Peng because of Betty Ting Pei. Wong wants Frank to write a book that exposes the truth, even if it means Frank being a ghostwriter. The book is scheduled to be released after the biopic. If Frank says no, then Wong will contact the other reporter who feeds the truth. We find out that this is George Tan Cypher. Despite the insinuation that Wong is supposed to be Charles Jung, a gangster who married Betty, yes, she married a triad gangster after words in 1976, if I remember correctly. What a coincidence, what a small world. I can't get off the impression that it's meant to be Robert Lee, because Robert Lee has never made a biography about his deceased brother. And you have to question why. It could be argued that Robert Lee, so Bruce Lee's brother, didn't go through with writing his announced book project because he would be put under so much scrutiny, and so elected Bleecker to be his scapegoat. In chapter 25, Ellen, so Linda Lee, tells Tom Bleecker, Adrian Marshall knew someone was writing some ridiculous book, but we never expected Robert Lee. We have to switch the names here. He thought that Raymond Wong had something to do with it. Raymond Wong can be Raymond Chow or can be New Wu Nagan. Near the end of that chapter, Bleecker writes something that I won't type out in full of the sake of propriety. Let's just say that he wants it to be known that the woman currently known as Linda Catwell or Linda Lee Catwell is worthy of being called the C word. And that's that. You know that she must be in it. Most likely, the location is wrong. Most likely, the circumstances are wrong. And most likely, the date is wrong. She must know much about it. Linda divorced Tom in 1919. The same year when George Tan was advertising his extensive Bruce Lee knowledge in the issues of Black Belt because it was the 50th anniversary of the Dragon's birth. Yeah, he was born in 1940. In chapter 19, it's revealed that Tom Bleecker tracked down Bruce Lee's herbalist while in the process of writing an unauthorized biography that is down and dirty expose. Naturally, there's a circulated photo online of Bruce Lee with his herbalist. In chapter 26, Raymond Chow finally makes his presence known as Curtis Hing. This reminds me of the Black Boxer and the Dragon Lives, Sam Curtis. Frank's, so Tom Bleecker's confrontation with Raymond Chow reminds me of the scene in The Big Boss where Sue Chien confronts the Big Boss. On a final note, it's worth noting that Raymond Chow is almost a homophone for courtesy. In the case of Raymond Chow, he acted polite but was well known for being something of a backstabber. Or what did Matthew Polly said with his predator senses? He said that he was known as the smiling tiger. That is that book that I'm referring to, that is from Tom Bleecker, T-Money. While writing, the interesting thing is that he was serving as a ghostwriter to Bruce Lee's widow, Linda Lee, because she received a large amount to write a biography, and she couldn't do it, and she asked an old friend called Tom Bleecker, because Tom Bleecker had kung fu lessons together with Bruce Lee and was a student of Grandmaster Ed Parker as well. You see Ed Parker with he thinks that foul play killed Bruce Lee too, and he was then doing that biography together with Linda Lee as a ghostwriter, and then they two fell in love. And he had access to all the documents, and 2 years later they divorced. His book is of course fiction, but you can put some things one to one together. So the fictional book is called T-Money, and that's a summary. While writing the biography of a deceased international Asian megastar whose death was ruled as accident, a former street reporter battles a powerful Asian crime syndicate when he discovers that the celebrity was murdered and that his widow, under the threat of death, has become an accomplice in the murder cover-up and the victim of extortion. Although Bleecker has many non-fiction book credits, including the Bruce Lee story that he co-wrote with Lee's widow Linda Lee, T-Money, which is a mystery suspense thriller inspired by true events, is his first novel. On reading the screenplay versions, acclaimed actor Peter Strauss commented, quote unquote, "I thoroughly enjoyed the material. I do believe the Asian underworld is a rich cinematic plateau, and the script had a nice Chinatown and Jay Gitt's character feel." And I think that is no coincidence that some kind of a dragon has been pictured on that book. That is page 232. And that's the end of our session. Thanks so much for having me. Much more coming up. And I think that we are now on the left lane when it comes down to the strange case, and that everything in this world is only in for the money. They all serve mammon instead of God. Thanks for having me. Signing off. And, of course, waiting for my beloved brother Brett.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, what a reality check this is, isn't it, Michael? You wouldn't expect. Well, I would never have expected to hear that Raymond Chow, the director of forget the name of the film company now, Golden Harvest, yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That he would be working with the intelligence agency of Hong Kong. But then again, Taiwan, yeah. Taiwan. Oh, Taiwan.
Yeah, no matter. Yeah, but it's just.
Well, they were filming in Taiwan or Hong Kong, but yeah, it's kind of confusing, isn't it? Yeah, it's only confusing because we're not familiar with the territory over there. But nevertheless, it's a shame that that's the case, that, you know, it's so difficult to learn the truth because you have to unravel the riddles.
Yeah, can you imagine how many hours, hundreds and maybe thousands of hours, book reading, telephone conversations, and all the stuff
That
is
you've
needed?
personally put into this, Michael. Yes.
Yeah, because I just wanted to, I don't wanted to stop half of the distance. You see that I just said that no, everything that I can do. You see that my problem is I can't speak Cantonese, I can't speak Mandarin, I can't write Chinese writings. Yeah, so I have to rely on translations and all the stuff. We will not solve the riddle, but you see that you have found so many points now that Wikipedia and all the mass media is not telling you.
Right, because they stand to lose everything if they told you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem. There's so much on the line that they can't budge a millimeter, or even a fraction of a millimeter, actually. So, yeah, it's a really difficult place to be. Yeah, Matthew 6:24, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve both God and mammon. Yeah, you can't serve them both. You have to choose. You're going to serve God, you're going to serve material.
Yeah, and we are speaking here from a very comfortable place. You see, I'm sitting in my chair, you're sitting in your chair, it is heated, you have a shelter and all the stuff. Can you imagine that this world is such a terrible place that many people outside, they have even to sell their children to make it, or all this. It's unimaginable for us, you see, that we are so comfortable here, but the world is actually a totally messy place, and these people, they want to have, in the case of Bruce Lee, wanted to have 10 millions. You see that he could have fed many children and many people, but he wanted to be the first Asian megastar. That's what I have a big problem with. I have a big problem with that. He wanted to be superior, and he was superior maybe with his martial arts skills, but what about empathy? What about humanity? What about all the stuff? You see that he was only in for his money, for the movies. And all the people we have found here, they are just in for the money.
Yep, that's right. Well, you know, he was still pretty young when he died, so... You know, if he would have perhaps got the hint when he was almost killed the first time, a couple months earlier, maybe I should back it off a bit. Maybe I should give up on my chief aim, you know, what's it worth anyway? But no, that didn't happen, did it? That's not the case here.
You see, we have crushing Western and Eastern social circles here. You see that Linda Lee could not get used to the fact that Chinese men, they have several concubines, and the higher they are in the social circles, yeah, maybe the more concubines and lovers they have. Yeah, I think these also clashing life scripts here. Yeah, Linda Lee maybe wanted to have a decent life with 2 children and wanted to adore the abilities of her husband, but then Bruce Lee went larger than life, and he just wanted to devote his entire life to movies. And I think that we will soon see it. We are more than halfway through with the script now. We will see why. We will see why. I want to see the picture behind it, and I think that I will provide you so many things. It's not about the death of Bruce Lee, actually. It's about the picture behind it, and I think that we will all be very surprised. Really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular to see the totality of the research you've done, Michael, because... that's a lot that's a lot of information you just gave us on Bruce Lee. It's not a small thing. And yeah,
I just make one comment if I may.
Yeah,
I know that
please.
I'm talking so much that I had almost lost my voice during that session here. Come on, when Raymond Chow was a CIA affiliate. Later. Just stick with it. Now,
yeah, Michael, I think that the listeners that you do have, I can vouch for sure that, you know, we're all very interested in this research, because it proves that, you know, the forces that are in this world are only in it to promote that false wealth that we have called money, because it's not real wealth. It's false wealth. It's not something that we're going to have for eternity, whereas God has offered something that is eternal. So put your faith in you know, what will last forever, is what the Bible is telling us. You know, don't put your faith in your gold and your silver. But what do we see all around us, everywhere we go? Mainstream and alternative media. Oh, they're always talking about invest your wealth into gold and silver, where the Bible says your gold will canker and your silver's corrupted. You know? I don't know. It's pretty simple to me, Michael. It's not rocket science here. Yeah. Yeah, but those who will lose their... Yeah. You're going to say...
Yeah, that's Matthew 16:26.
Yeah, there you go. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Good question. What can we possibly give to our Creator in exchange for our soul? And what is the soul anyway?
Yeah,
and isn't it your emotions?
The problem is that Bruce Lee did not believe in any God.
Well, he believed himself to be a god then. That's the problem. He wouldn't submit. It's like when Satan fell from heaven. He took a third of the angels with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of his influence.
And every time I have to ask the question then, Brad, can you imagine how clever Satan must be if he can deceive angels?
Yeah, that's right. Well, and wouldn't God have known that from beforehand?
Yeah, that's quite true, yeah. We can also assume that although he was been meant to glorify God, God knew on purpose that if he would give a free will, because he must have been given a free will to Lucifer, that he won't obey. So you can assume in the long run that Lucifer was created for that purpose, or on purpose, because God knows the beginning and the end.
Yeah, and if we have some unlearned people listening to this far, you would know that, or you might not know that there is something called the Luciferian commandment. There's only one commandment. It's called "Do as thou wilt," and I often equate this to free will. You know. Because when you're in accordance with Satan, there is no obedience to any kind of law that's been ordained by Almighty God. No, you create your own law and you do as you want. That's their commandment. It makes a lot of sense, Michael.
Yeah, which in the end comes to the same conclusion that you shall be as gods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you shall know both good and evil. Yeah. Yeah, the ways of good and the ways of evil. You want to know both. Well, which one do you obey? That's the question. You can't obey both. You can't be obedient to both.
Yeah, what would have happened if Bruce Lee would not have the goal to be the first Asian superstar, but wanted to be just an actor, and would have been faithful to his wife? I would just love to see to raise his children, Brandon Bruce Lee and Shannon Lee. What would have become of Bruce Lee? But it wasn't meant to be. It's just a hypothetical question that if he would have just an ordinary job and not wanted to have a Rolls Royce and all the stuff which in the end brought him down. All this strive for mammon brought him down because he was just...
He wasn't able to grasp how he was being used in the first place.
Yeah,
if he would have been able to grasp how he was just being used as an actor to play this part to satisfy the whims of, you know, the producers. But that's the thing, when you become a producer yourself, and this is what happened to Bruce Lee, he couldn't give it up, Michael.
Yeah, and he couldn't also wait. Yeah, you see that.
No.
In the end, in the long run, you will see that he had to obey the agenda. There is no other way around. You see that if it's not the right time, it's not the right time. You can be the best of the world, then you won't be famous if the agenda does not admit it. Yeah, so you see that if in 1971, out of the blue, China became a member of the United Nations, and in 1971, out of the blue, was the year that an Asian megastar arrived. And you see that when the Vietnam War was on a decline, 1973, on the end of 72, actually already Warner Brothers stepped in. So I think it is highly connected to politics, and so that you can be Bruce Lee and you can be working 24 hours a day, you won't make it unless the script or the politicians, the laws, the government, whatever you would like to come up with, will allow it. And so you are never free in this world, because it is just running a script outside. It's an agenda. It's a Satanic Media Agenda. Remind you of the title here, please. And so therefore I highly suggest that it has nothing to do with an actor's ability, if he makes it, but only under the condition will he make it if he serves the agenda. And then in the beginning of 1970s, the time was right for an Asian superstar, because then China, or Hong Kong was the territory of the British, okay, but China in general, and Bruce Lee was seen as Chinese for his appearance maybe, and he did Chinese Kung Fu, yeah, in the end. Yeah, so, and that was the Kung Fu thing, material arts, martial arts was being seen as Chinese heritage. Yeah, so that was the thing that was where Chinese were superior. So that was the big opportunity to install a Chinese superhero to the entire world. And then came the combination of being Chinese and being American born, and having a mother who has English roots and all the stuff. Everything went together into Bruce Lee. And you see that was the choice, and he was the choice of the people who said that, okay, yeah, he has ability and he has talents, and now we can distribute his movies. And then his movies, they were then been produced in Hong Kong, but then shown in United States later on in America, in the United States, if I remember correctly. I can't have anything in my memory. They weren't shown only from 1973 in America. That was when they had that, yeah, not peace, but...
Ceasefire?
Yeah, ceasefire in Vietnam. So don't tell me that is not related to it. I think that is very much, there's a high probability that these events are related. Yeah, you can't have an enemy, put up an enemy for Uncle Sam's soldiers, or the soldiers of Mr. Yeah, you know whom I mean. Yeah, the Archbishop of New York. Yeah, Spelly's War, Cardinal Spellman's War, which died in 1660 somewhere. you can't have an army fighting in Vietnam and at the same time having a Chinese, an Asian superstar in America. That won't work. You can't have Asians as your number one enemy when your boys in the United States Army are fighting against in the Vietnamese jungle, and at the same time a kung fu star, which is in Hong Kong, is quite nearby Vietnam from the American perspective. And so that after the Vietnam thing was settled and China was opened, then also the media is opening and all the stuff. And these events, I think almost nobody is mentioning this, but I think that these events are related. You can look it up if you would like to. It was a conflict until the fall of Saigon in 1975, but there was something in 1973, and it was, I think it was Kissinger who wanted to get along with the war. It lasted almost 20 years with direct US involving, ending in 1973. And 1973 was this year when Enter the Dragon was the first American Hong Kong collaboration. Yeah, you see, in March 1973, that was during the time when Enter the Dragon was they were starting to do the pictures in February, and the last ones were done in, I think it was in April. So they did some shots in February, but the main thing was going on in March and April in 1973, and that is absolutely corresponding to the ceasefire in Vietnam in March 1973. This is all politics. In my humble opinion, there are no coincidences. No, there aren't. It would like if you would imply that the United States did not know about the Pearl Harbor incident. I think...
In which they did.
Yes.
Not in general, but only the very high up, the very, very top of the hierarchy here.
Yeah, yes, you see, withdrawal of United States coalition forces from Vietnam in 1973 after the Paris Peace Accords. Yeah. Treaty signed on January the 27th, 1973. And I would have to look up the timeline in Enter the Dragon, but I think that started in January 1973. A collaboration between an American company and a Hong Kong company for the first time. So, of course, the contracts have been settled quite a few months before. So, at the end of the year 1972, Bruce Lee knew that he had green light to start off the first American collaboration. And in the end, that was also the thing that killed him. At least it put him into the line of fire of some Hong Kong blokes who did not like him, because obviously there was much kind of a disagreement behind the scenes, which we have learned. But I have looked it up this week with the Paris Peace Accords, and I found it so obvious that it we can look it up. So, Vietnam War, Paris Peace Accords, taking place January the 22nd, 1973. Peace Accords, 27th of January. So, start of Enter the Dragon, January 28. Of course, this is just a coincidence, but you see, if you look up everything, then it's so close. Yeah, and when you know then that China was beginning to start in 1971, it's just too much now. But if you look it up, Kennedy was the one who was then been blamed not to take part into this Vietnam War, which there were millions on stake, yeah, as well for the oil industry, especially in Dallas. Yeah, and then the same Vietnam War was being ended a bit from the withdrawal of US coalition forces from Vietnam in 22nd of 1973, and that was extremely close to that time when Warner Brothers did the collaboration with the Hong Kong company, so that they knew that this picture, of course, needs a few months to shoot and to produce and to, I think in the case of Bruce Lee, 10th of May, then to be what is it here? It's not subtitled, but to be dubbed. And they knew that when we start in January, the movie will be shown in autumn somewhere. Yeah. And then in autumn, the American public, or the worldwide public, because Warner Brothers want to have an international movie, the worldwide public is ready for an Asian star. So much my 2 cents on it. I'm signing off.
Thanks again, Michael. Yeah, this is proving to be a very widespread study. It goes way, way out of the normal parameters. But at any regard, it's quite interesting how this research is panning out. And again, I didn't really expect Raymond, was it Raymond Chow?
Yes.
Is that his name? Raymond Chow, affiliated with the equivalent of the CIA in Taiwan, but what do I know? I guess we can expect the worst when you think of what's going on in the States then, yeah? I mean, yeah, with the media, I mean, it's pretty obvious when you look at the music agenda. That's very obvious. But then again, it's not so obvious when you're just casually looking at it. Just trying to enjoy the music or enjoy the movies for what you perceive they are, and not looking at what they actually are. Actually, putting the what can we say, the spiritually active role into the Bible and sorting these things out. I mean, that's what we're doing, Michael. It takes time, it takes a lot of energy, but yeah, look at the end result. The end result is you see that all these worldly media outlets are formed to produce an outcome, and that outcome has to serve the agenda that the fallen ones have put in place. And people at large would never admit to that ever, because it goes against everything that they've been taught their entire lives, the ratio studiorum. And the minute you do that is the minute you create a lot of enemies. And that's essentially what we've done, Michael, is create a lot of enemies in the world, so to speak, and a lot of friends in Christ. Well, maybe not a lot, actually, very few. But still, precious few people, Michael. That's what we rely on, and that's what keeps us going. A precious few people that really have a love for the truth and a love for our Creator. And with that, we'll close it down. And God willing, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.